You're welcome to Medical Sciences Made Easy by Naphtali Muhumuza. And in this session, we want to talk about introduction to haematopoiesis, or you can call it hemopoiesis, whereby in the previous video we have introduced hematology, we have looked at what hematology is, whereby it was study of blood, and we have looked at the composition of blood and the functions. So in this video, we want to focus on the formation. As I was introducing hematology, I told you it is the study of the blood. That is blood composition and function, formation, that is by hematopoiesis, and disorders. So now we want to focus on the formation of blood. And we want to begin with, as we see that hematopoiesis it also comes from the Greek word which is divided into two, whereby hema is blood and poiesis means formation. So hematopoiesis is the study of blood formation. And this formation of blood, it takes place in different tissues in the body depending on the age, as we are going to see. But the major site of blood formation is the bone marrow. But in the fetus, we see it also occurring in the yolk sac and in the liver and the spleen, which we call extramedullary. So that this hematopoiesis is divided into two. That is medullary hematopoiesis, medullary and extramedullary. Whereby medullary means this is hematopoiesis occurring in the bone marrow. It occurs in the bone marrow. Whereas extramedullary means outside the bone marrow. That is in other terms like liver, spleen, and mesoderm layer of the yolk sac. That is in the infancy. Even in adulthood, whenever the bone marrow fails, extramedullary can resume, whereby the liver can take over the role of blood formation. So we are seeing that this blood formation is categorized into two, depending on the site where this process is occurring, whereby medullary in the bone marrow, then extramedullary in the outside the bone marrow, that is majorly the liver, the spleen, and the yolk sac. After knowing what hematopoiesis is, we are going to see after fertilization in the fetus, how does hematopoiesis occur? That is after fertilization. So we want to see a subheading as hematopoiesis in fetus. Hematopoiesis in fetal life. That is after fertilization. How does hematopoiesis occur? And you allow me to use a table whereby I'm going to have the stage. After having the stage, I'm also going to have the site of production, which is going to be taking place. After having a site, I'm going to have the duration or the period where it occurs, when it occurs. And then finally, I will see the type of cell produced. Type of cells produced. This is my table. And in a fetus, this formation of blood, it starts at 2 weeks after fertilization. We see at 2 weeks of fertilization, we see the first stage is called mesoblastic stage. Mesoblastic stage. And this mesoblastic stage, it is occurring in the mesoderm layer of the yolk sac. Mesoderm layer of the yolk sac, or sometimes we normally say yolk sac. So we see at the 2 weeks after fertilization, there is a formation of the mesoderm layer, whereby in the mesoderm layer of the yolk sac, we see haematopoiesis starting. So it starts at 2 weeks and it goes up to 2 months. From 2 weeks up to 2 months. It occurs in the mesoderm layer of the yolk sac. And the cell here being produced, that these cells, the yolk sac cells, are committed in producing only red cells. So the major cells being produced during this stage is erythrocytes. Erythrocytes are being produced in this stage. This is the first stage. Then after knowing the first stage, we got the second stage. And the second stage is known as the hepatic stage. It is known as the hepatic stage. And this hepatic stage, since it is hepatic, means majorly it is occurring in the liver cells. This is major. Then in the spleen, it is minor. So haematopoiesis, after 2 months, it takes place in the liver majorly and in the spleen at a smaller extent. And we see the major cell, this one, it begins from 2 weeks, 2 months to 2 to 7 months of fetal life. So we see 2 to 7 months of fetal life. Haematopoiesis is occurring in the liver majorly and in the spleen. And the major cells being produced here, we have the granulocytes. Granulocytes are being produced plus platelets are the major cells, whereby these liver cells and the spleen, they are committed to produce platelets. That is from 2 to 7 months of fetal life. Then the last one, the last stage, let me put it up here. The third stage is myeloid stage. Myeloid stage. And this myeloid stage, the site is the bone marrow. Bone marrow. And at the smaller extent, the lymphatics. And the period, it is from 4 up to birth. That is from 4 to 9 months and onwards after birth. And the major cell being produced in this stage is the lymphocytes and monocytes. So these are the major cells being produced during myeloid stage. So during myeloid stage, we see it's occurring major in the bone marrow and the smaller extent the lymphatics, and it starts from 4 to 9 months, and it is producing lymphocytes and monocytes. No wonder why children have higher levels of lymphocytes than neutrophils. So this is haematopoiesis in fetus, whereby we have seen the stages. Those are 3 stages. Mesoblastic stage, which starts at 2 weeks up to 2 months of fetal life, and it is occurring in the mesoderm layer of the yolk sac, and we see being committed to erythropoiesis. Then during hepatic stage, begins at 2 to 7 months, and the site is the liver majorly, and the smaller extent the spleen, and the major cells are the granulocytes and the platelets. Then the myeloid stage, which is medullary haematopoiesis, is occurring in the bone marrow, the smaller extent the lymphatics, now 4 to 9 months of fetal life, occurring to produce lymphocytes and monocytes. So these first 2 stages, that's why we have called them extramedullary. These ones are extramedullary because they are occurring outside the bone marrow. Then the last is medullary because it is occurring within the bone marrow. So this is how we can describe haematopoiesis in general in fetus. That's how it occurs in fetus. So from there we are going to look at, after we have seen how they are produced, even I can put it in a graphical presentation. I can put it graphically, that if I have this graph, and this is in fetal life. This is fetal life, and this fetal life is being from 0 to 9 months. This is in months. Then after birth, this is after term. In childhood, this one is going to be in years. That from 0, this is 2, this can be 2 months, this can be 4, this can be 6, then 8, then 9. That haematopoiesis or hemopoiesis, we see it occurring in the yolk sac from 2 weeks to 2 months. This is in the yolk sac. Then from 2 months, to 7 is in the liver and the spleen. Then from 4 up to birth is occurring. So this is the yolk sac, this is in the hepatic, this is the liver, and this is the bone marrow. Then, but we said it to a smaller extent, we see it also occurring in the spleen. And this is how I can put it in the graphical presentation. Then we know that after birth it does not come down. This is the demarcation. See, this is fetal life. This is after birth. After birth, we see this haematopoiesis occurring majorly in the sternum. This is because when you're still young, they occur in in all bones, because they contain red bone marrow. But after some time, it concentrates in the long bones and the flat bones, whereby majorly it is occurring in the sternum, in the ribs, in the vertebrae, in the tibia and femur. This is in adults. After birth, when you become adult after 18 years, we see haematopoiesis occurring in the long bones and the flat bones. That is sternum. We have the vertebrae, that is the vertebral column. Then we have the ribs, we have the femur, and sometimes the skull. So both flat. So in adults, if they ask you haematopoiesis in adults, it occurs only in the long bones and flat bones. Whereby long bones, we have seen long bones like vertebrae, like femur, like sternum is not a flat bone. We have the tibia. In the flat bones, we have the skull, we have the sternum, and the ribs. So this is where it concentrates in adults, because it is the long bones and the flat bones that retains the red bone marrow, whereas others, they are turned into yellow marrow, and we know that haematopoiesis does not occur in the yellow marrow. It occurs only in the red bone marrow. In the ends of the flat bones and the long bones, that's where haematopoiesis becomes committed, but not in the bones containing yellow marrow. So this is how I can put it in drawing, that whereby from here we are seeing this is 18 years, that is in adulthood. 18 years and on, it is occurring in the long bones and the flat bones, which contain the red bone marrow. So this is what I can compare between fetal life and in adulthood. So this is after birth, but majorly in adults. In adults, it is occurring majorly in these bones. So finally, in this video, we want to look at how does hematopoiesis occur. We have seen how it occurs in the fetus and how it occurs in the adult life. So we want to see what is it. We want to go deeper and we find out how does it occur, which cells participate in hematopoiesis. So in hematopoiesis, the most cell in the bone marrow in extramedullary sites is the hematopoietic stem cell. The most primitive one is the totipotent stem cell, and this totipotent stem cell can give rise to hematopoietic stem cell, or what you can call pluripotent stem cell. You can call it hematopoietic stem cell, or you can call it pluripotent. And these stem cells, they have ability of self-renewal. They have ability of self-renewal, and still these stem cells, whenever you take them anywhere, they can produce any other type of the cell. When you plant them somewhere in other body tissue, it can produce any cell you require because they have the ability of self-renewal. So we see this hematopoietic stem cell, they undergo what we call proliferation and differentiation, whereby this can differentiate. They first proliferate. Proliferation is multiplication, increase in numbers. As we have seen, they can do what we call self-renewal. But differentiation is becoming more specialized. The differentiation is whereby cells become specialized. So we see this hematopoietic, or what we call pluripotent stem cell, they can differentiate into two stem cells, what we call the two progenitor cells. And that is the myeloid stem cell, and lymphoid stem cell. Then after differentiating into two stem cells, these stem cells can undergo more proliferation and differentiation to give rise to different progenitor cells, whereby the progenitor cells we can have colony forming unit, but before forming colony forming unit we form burst forming unit, and then burst forming unit gives us colony forming unit, erythroblast. Then we see another proliferation to give us colony forming unit, basophil. Then there is also colony forming unit, eosinophil. There is also colony forming unit, GM. And lastly is colony forming unit. Let me reduce them. I want to enter the other side. We have colony forming unit GM and colony forming unit MEG for platelets. So we see the myeloid stem cell is uncommitted. It can also undergo differentiation to produce these progenitor cells. So these ones are called the progenitor cells, whereby these progenitor cells, this one gives rise to red cells. This one gives rise to basophils. This one gives rise to eosinophils. And this one differentiates more to give colony forming unit, G, and colony forming unit M. This one G gives neutrophils, and this one gives monocytes. Then the colony-forming unit megakaryocyte is the one that gives rise to platelets, or what we call thrombocytes. So we are seeing the myeloid stem cell producing red cells, basophils, eosinophils, neutrophils, and monocytes plus platelets or thrombocytes. Both originate from a common progenitor cell or a common stem cell known as myeloid stem cell, which gives rise to these progenitor cells. And these progenitor cells are the ones that undergo maturation to give these different types of cells. Then the lymphoid. The lymphoid, for it can differentiate to give to pre-T lymphocytes and pre-B lymphocytes. Pre-B lymphocytes create another space and give to pre-T, then pre-B lymphocytes and pre-natural killer cells. Pre-natural killer cells. Whereby these are originating from the lymphoblast, and these are the ones that give rise to T lymphocytes. This one gives rise to B lymphocytes, and this one gives rise to natural killer cells. Whereby T lymphocytes are known as large, these ones are known as small. And we shall see these T lymphocytes, we show you how they can differentiate further to give T cytotoxic, which are known as CD8, T helper, and T regulatory. Whereby these T helper are known as CD for positive cells, these are CD8 positive cells participating in cellular mediated immunity. And these B lymphocytes, we told you that they proliferate into plasma cells. And these plasma cells produce immunoglobulins, what we call antibodies, which render body humoral immunity. Plasma cells, they differentiate into plasma cells and memory cells. That if you have suffered an infection, the second time it comes, the body will always remember that it already fought this infection and can trigger what we call secondary immunity. So these B lymphocytes proliferate into memory cells and plasma cells. And this is what we can introduce under the process of haematopoiesis. In the next video, we shall see that this multipotent stem cell, which is giving rise to this formation of red cells known as erythropoiesis. We shall look at erythropoiesis in details, how red cells are formed. We shall come and look at granulopoiesis. We shall look at granulopoiesis, whereby it is the formation of the granulocytes, that is the basophils, eosinophils, and neutrophils. And then still we shall come and look at monopoiesis. Monopoiesis. Then we shall also look at thrombopoiesis. Thrombopoiesis. Then lastly we shall look at lymphopoiesis. Those are the stages we shall look at. We shall talk about in details erythropoiesis, granulopoiesis, monopoiesis, thrombopoiesis, and lymphopoiesis. That is what we shall talk about. And in each, we shall always see what are the trigger factors or what are the necessary substances required to trigger those different processes. And the requirements, we are ending up with the requirements in general. Requirements of haematopoiesis, requirements of haematopoiesis. And this haematopoiesis will require substances like colon stimulating factors, colon stimulating colon stimulating factors, which we abbreviate as CSF, whereby under colon stimulating factors we need the colon stimulating factor G, factor GM, factor M. All these are needed. Number 2, we need growth factors, hematopoietic growth factors, where we have cytokines. We have cytokines, and these cytokines majorly we see production of interleukins, whereby we shall look at interleukins type 1, type 2, 3, 5, 6, playing a big role in hematopoiesis. Then we shall see other requirements like hormones, whereby hormones we shall need erythropoietin hormone and thrombopoietin. Whereby erythropoietin is for erythropoiesis and thrombopoietin is for thrombopoiesis, all produced by the juxtaglomerular apparatus of the kidney. These guys are produced by the kidney, juxtaglomerular apparatus of the kidney. And they are the one that makes these stem cells, multipotent stem cells, to become committed. And number 4, we need nutrients. What are those nutrients? Is like vitamins, like vitamin B12, we need folate, and then we need proteins, which supply the amino acids during erythropoiesis. So these are the 4 requirements of hematopoiesis in general. Thank you so much for being with us from the beginning. I always remind you to subscribe and like the video and put the comments where you see you have learned or where you need us to improve. This is Muhumuza Naphtali Medical Science.com. In this video we have looked at introduction to hematopoiesis, whereby we have seen hematopoiesis in the fetus and different stages, which we have talked about: mesoblastic, hepatic, and the myeloid stage. From there, we have seen how hematopoiesis occurs in adults. That in adults, it becomes committed to the ends of the long bones and flat bones. Then we went ahead and we looked at in details how does hematopoiesis occur. And we have summarized it here, where we have seen hematopoietic stem cell undergoing proliferation, undergoing differentiation, and still maturation. So the processes we talk about under hematopoiesis is proliferation, differentiation, and maturation. You must know those terms in hematopoiesis. Whereby we have seen it gives 2 common stem cells, the myeloid and the lymphoid, and we have seen how it occurs. Thank you so much for listening. In the next videos, we shall tackle one by one, explain more into details. It means